In May 2023, Konami announced a remake of their classic PS2 game, Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater. And as such a huge Metal Gear fan, who's played the original version of Snake Eater on the PS2, as well as the 3DS version, I was really excited to get my hands on the remake. We hadn't even gotten a whiff of any new Metal Gear content since 2015. Bar one that didn't really happen, that was all a dream. And people were hungry for more Metal Gear. However, the general consensus within the community was that Metal Gear would never be the same without Hideo Kojima at the wheel, and the soulless corporation that is Konami would never be able to deliver a Metal Gear title that had even a fraction of the artistry or refined gameplay of the ones produced by Kojima and his team. But in August 2025, the game was released, and personally, I think there's a lot to like about what Delta was bringing to the table. The graphics were absolutely gorgeous, and the environments are some of the most real-feeling areas I've ever seen in a video game before. All of the character models look really nice, especially Snake, and the animations that were ripped from Metal Gear Solid 5 are still buttery smooth 10 years later. Plus, David Hayter's Naked Snake is as good as it always has been. The story is obviously a 10 out of 10 because it's just classic Snake Eater, but even though this was just a remake, the game managed to feel completely fresh and new. As of right now, I have about 50 hours on the game, so it's safe to say that it's super replayable, even on the European Extreme mode, where just getting spotted by the enemy will cause a mission failure. This game's release has caused a lot of hope to spark up in the Metal Gear Solid fanbase, as publishers will often remake a classic game from a franchise to test if gamers are still interested, and if it works out, new content may be on the horizon. But it isn't all good. Many fans were disappointed with the lack of content in the game, as it doesn't have too much more to play than the original PS2 release, with the online mode Fox Hunt being the only real notable addition. Fans such as myself think that the new style of the game could have added a lot more, like cut content from the original game, and gameplay mechanics from Metal Gear Solid 5, like CQC throw chains and grabbing around corners or over short walls. I suppose the argument could be made that these things were left out in order to create a more authentic experience, which, I guess, the legacy style is an option if that's what you want to play. But that leads me to the biggest issue that people had with the game: the price. Metal Gear Solid Delta was a £60 game at release. That's $70 USD, and for a lot of people, that was completely unacceptable. Delta is still a PS2 game at its core, and the story isn't very long at all, with a lot of the runtime being cutscenes and backstory, since Snake Eater introduces a lot of new characters to the Metal Gear Solid series. In spite of this, you may notice that reviews from critics neglect to mention the price. IGN, for example, doesn't mention it even once. This is because of a very clever move from Konami, whether it was intentional or not. Critics were sent free copies of the game, which isn't uncommon for video game publishers to do, but as a result, the people reviewing Metal Gear Solid Delta would get wrapped up in nostalgia and awe at the game's new graphics and fail to think about this one question: is it worth the price? The game obviously didn't take as much money to develop as other AAA games, just because it was already masterfully designed, and the motion capture, animations and voice lines were already made. On top of that, the game was made in Unreal 5, so much of the development could be outsourced by Konami to people that they could pay much less. This means that the £60 price tag wasn't necessary at all, but it was still there, and it sets a dangerous precedent for how to make money in the industry. It shows that the bare minimum is acceptable, and consumers are dumb enough to buy anything with fancy graphics or a well-known IP. And this is bound to lead to companies releasing more Unreal slot for a premium price, with the artistic aspect of the games industry being completely disregarded. This isn't the way that the game industry should be going. But with Nintendo's controversial game pricing, and many publishers believing that buying isn't owning anymore, the future of gaming doesn't look secure at all for the consumer. So I ask you this: do you think that Metal Gear Solid Delta was a bad move? Or that Konami was innocently trying to kickstart the comeback to a beloved franchise, albeit in a greedy way? In the end, it's up to us as the consumers to decide, as our wallets hold all the power. Will Metal Gear Solid Delta be the catalyst for more greedy behaviour from publishers, or not? Only time will tell.